It's been well over a year since we looked at putting the Kanka vise in over here. The Kanka vise is one Blacksmith Supply sent. It's a new manufactured vise made in Turkey, so these are still available new. A lot of you have been asking what my thoughts are about this vise after I've used it for a while. The short version is, I've been happy with this vise. I have no real complaints about it. My biggest concern is still what it was when I first put it in, and that is that it is kind of a lightweight vise, and just maybe it's my personal character or something, but I like big heavy tools in the blacksmith shop. I've got a 460-pound anvil and a 60-kilogram power hammer, and I wouldn't mind a vise that's a little heavier. But saying that, this one has never failed me. It has done everything I needed, and I have not worked lightly on it. I've worked just the way I would, did not treat it like it was delicate or extra light, and it has not been a problem. It's a good solid vise, holds really well, no issues whatsoever. If you're looking for a vise in your shop and don't have a specific need for something more massive, this vise is going to get the job done for you. However, because I do like bigger, heavier tools, I have thought it would be nice to have a bigger vise in here. And I have another use for this vise. I have someplace that I think this will be better suited for, because I need a vise that I can put in and take down as needed and store it, because I don't want it up all the time. But there have been multiple times in the last couple of months that I've really wished I had a vise over on the platen table. So today I have started the process of moving that vise over here. I never used the original mounting bracket that was supposed to go with it. I did a welded up bracket that's welded to that post. So I still had the original mounting bracket, and I'm able to bolt it onto the platen table. I'll talk about why this platen table is really convenient for that as we get later on in the video. But this will give me the ability to bolt the vise pretty much anywhere around the perimeter of this table as I need it, and it should only take 5 or 10 minutes to set it up, 5 or 10 minutes to tear it back down, plenty of room under the table to store it, so it'll be convenient. And then I've got a much bigger area that I can work around the vise if I'm bending scrolls or doing something like that than I do with a vise set up over against the wall. But what am I going to do to replace the vise over there? I still want a vise over there. That's where I'm going to use a vise most of the time in the shop. So I do want a nice big heavy vise there, just like I say, because I like big heavy tools at the blacksmith shop. And I found just the thing. This is an 8-inch, 70-kilogram French style vise. And this just may be one of the nicest vintage leg vises that I have ever seen. And it's got some unique features. I've never seen another one just like this. But before I can get this vise installed over here, I got to move this vise over there. Now I'm hoping that this plate with the rubber piece under it will reduce any impact from the foot of this vise up against my brick floor so I don't crack my brick. The good news is this vise probably won't be one that sees heavy forging. It'll be more for twisting and bending. The platen table actually has a system for bolting things through where you don't have to crawl underneath it. An 1 3/4 square head will pass through the table. You can turn it 45 degrees, pull back up on it. It's got little indexes cast into the table, so that will hold. That's what will allow this vise to be installed and taken back out again as often as I need to. Because this vise only weighs about 55 pounds, I can take it down, I can store it under the table or in a corner somewhere, and when I need it, it's not a big deal to carry it over here. I'm not going to need a dolly or a crane or get somebody to come help me because it's too heavy for me to lift and hold on to while I put the bolts in. And I don't have to take the bracket apart to do that. All I have to do is loosen the bolts enough for that 1 3/4 square to drop through the bottom of the table, turn it 45 degrees, and it'll pull out of the table. And this will be able to go anywhere on the perimeter of this platen table. That means if I got a scroll form in here and I need to swing a big piece of material, it's less likely to hit something. Over there against the wall, sometimes I had to take the scroll form out, turn it 180 degrees, put the piece in the opposite way, bend it till it hits the wall again, turn it around. Really gets kind of fiddly. This will eliminate a lot of that when I have the vise set up over here. I'm having a demonstration in the shop in a couple of days, and if I'm using the vise in the back of the shop up against the wall, my back will be to the people there watching the demo, and that's not very friendly, and it's not a good way for them to see what's going on. But this way I've got a vise where I'm going to be 5 feet from most of the people watching. People can gather around if they need to if I'm doing work in the vise. It's close and convenient to the anvil, so this is going to be really handy when I can have it set up. The advantage of being able to take it down is a lot of what I will do on this table needs the full table, and a vise would be in the way. For instance, the gate project I've been working on, the full-size layout hangs over all 4 sides of this table, and if I push it all the way to one end so that the vise can be here, I can't walk past the other end of the table. So I need to be able to center that and get it lined up right, and taking this vise down and storing it will be a necessity. But I really think this Kenka vise is the ideal vise for this use because it's a good solid vise, it holds well, but it isn't too heavy. Now before I wrestle that big monster into place, I've got to make sure I build a mounting bracket, and it'll need something underneath it to distribute the impact force from the vise so it doesn't crack the concrete. Well, we got that vise set up just in time for the demo yesterday. The demo went pretty well. I actually used the Kenka vise on the platen table more for that so people could gather around and see what I was doing at that vise, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get that done before people showed up yesterday. And while the demo went well, I would say the project did not go well. This was the idea for the project. This is something I did months ago when I was getting ready for the demo at the Northwest Blacksmith Association. I had previously done a very big, heavy candelabra that had big slit drift holes pass through for the arms, pass through the bar. It was a pretty labor-intensive project. Used the power hammer a lot on that. So this design was one that didn't use the power hammer so much and was more obtainable for people that didn't have the heavy tools, didn't want to work in heavy bars, and it could all be done by hand at the anvil. Unfortunately, doing a live demo in the shop, you're always kind of in a hurry. You want to keep the audience's attention. You don't want to let things get too boring or people start to drift off and they miss what you're doing. And there's kind of a time limit. You never get started on time because I'm kind of out of the way. People have a 3 or 4 hour drive to get home, so they need to get out of here kind of early in the afternoon. So you don't always have the time to do your best work. And because it was a little bit rushed, the piece we did yesterday is crooked. The candle pans are a little bit loose. There's a little gap down here. And this, as a finished piece, is a failure. Demo was a complete success. The piece is a failure. And that's okay, because these demos are social events. They're a chance to get together with friends, people you haven't seen for a while. You look at some ideas, people are inspired by the concept and some of the methods. They have their own idea of what they would do differently when they get back in their shops. So if the finished piece isn't a saleable product that I'd put in a gallery somewhere, the demo is still a success. Personally, I think I'm going to cut the candle holder off of this base, save the base, put the rest of that in the scrap pile, because it is just ugly enough that I really don't want it around. Well, this vise is certainly a beast, and it's set up well enough to use right now. I think there are a few changes I'm going to want to make, but I wanted to get it up for the demo I had over the weekend. I think it's a little bit tall. Right now it is right at elbow height, and a lot of people say that's the ideal height for a vise. For filing, hacksawing, that's probably a pretty good height. But for forging, I think it's a little tall. I'm going to have to think a little bit about how I'm going to fix that. But as far as vise height goes, the old vise that used to be over here measured 40.5 inches from the floor. Right now it's over in the other shop where the coal forge is, and it's on a 2.5 inch base. So that makes it 43 inches off the floor. So that's only 2 inches shorter than what this vise is. So it's not a huge difference. The Kanka vise is 42.5 inches off the floor, very similar height. And my Wilton vise over on the other bench, where I do most of my filing and hacksawing, things like that, is at 45 inches. It's the same, and it doesn't seem particularly tall. Part of this is just because this is such a massive piece of furniture that it looks like it's taller than it might really be. So I'm going to work with it like this and see what I think. But I put that 3/4 inch plate under here with a 1 inch rubber mat to protect the concrete from the impact. I don't want to crack the concrete under the vise. But I think if I take the vise down, take that plate back out, take the rubber mat out, and then cut a recess in the concrete, I can probably go inch, 1.5 inches deep before I get to the point that I'm going to hit the rebar in there. It's about a 4-inch thick pad. There's rebar probably at about 2 inches. But I could go down and recess a plate in at least flush with the concrete. So maybe if I go 1 inch down, I can put all that same stuff right back down in the concrete. And then I can at least get 1 inch lower than this. I can get it down to 44 inches. Worst case scenario, I cut the legs off a little bit, but boy, I hate cutting up vintage tools because you can never go back from that. So I'm going to try to avoid that at all costs. The other problem I have is up here where the screw box is at the back of the vise. There's only 4 inches of space here before it hits the top of my table, and it will hit my mounting bracket before that, and the swell where the screw goes through the back of the vise would interfere with my mounting bracket even earlier. So I really don't have more than about 2 inches that I can fiddle with this. So I'm not going to be too worried about it. I suppose worst case, I can make myself a little platform that I can put in here if I really need to stand up taller. Might not be a bad idea sometimes anyways, because a lot of times even a vise this much lower is still higher than you want depending on what you're working on in the vise. So there's going to be a lot of trial and error. Live with it like this for a while and see what I want to do. Now, where did I get this really cool old vise? This is a French style vise, I've been told, and it was actually acquired in Belgium, not by me. It was acquired by Vintage Toolworks, somebody I follow on Instagram. I'm not sure if he's got a website anywhere else or if it is just Instagram where he posts stuff, but he collects a lot of these tools in Europe where they had a much bigger, longer blacksmithing tradition than we have had here in the US. So there's way more stuff, way better prices there than what you get here. And somehow he gets all that stuff shipped over here and he sells them for what I consider reasonable prices. This vise was $750 plus shipping. I don't think that is at all outrageous for a vise that big. I would like to pay $100 for a vise that big, but that is not realistic. And the other things that I've seen on his Instagram account with a price, seem reasonable. He's got big anvils, 300, 400, 500 pound anvils. Most of them are European double horn anvils. He frequently has some really nice big swedge blocks. Fly presses, if you're looking for a vintage fly press, he's probably a good source for that. Easy to work with. From the time I said I want the vise, mailed him the check, waited for it to get to him. He had to get it palletized and shipped it to me, picked it up. It was less than 3 weeks, I think, to do all of that. So I think the service was really good. The shipping was pretty quick, and it was pretty economical. So if you do Instagram, it's worth checking out Vintage Toolworks on Instagram, and I'll put a link down in the video description. If you're interested in some of that kind of equipment, you can check it out. If nothing else, it's fun to look at the pictures and see what kind of tools are available out there. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll update you on the vise whenever I figure out what I'm going to do to lower it down and get it set just the way I want it. But in the meantime, I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.